Well, there are three types of review assignment that I'm going to mention as part of the course. One of them I'm going to mention more for general interest. The other two both come up fairly regularly as questions. Firstly, the one for general interest. As we know, companies get their annual financial statements audited in detail. But the world's biggest companies don't just prepare their figures on a one-year basis, they also bring out figures quarterly. So a big company will produce first quarter, half-year figures, third quarter, final figures. Now, it's often the case that when you bring out your half-year figures, there's quite a lot of interest in them. And as a result, your investors may be keen to know that the half-year figures are somewhere close to accurate. You don't need to get them audited, but a lot of companies get these half-year accounts, these interim financial statements, reviewed. Now, of course, there's no real need to audit them in huge amounts of detail, partly because once the year end happens, they will, of course, be audited in detail along with the second half year. Okay, so there's one example of a review assignment, but of course, since this is the financial statements, just half a year, the exercise is so similar to a final audit that it's unlikely that the examiner would test this in any detail. The other two areas, though, the other two examples of review assignments come up, as I said, far more frequently. Imagine you are a company and you wish to raise some money, maybe from a bank. When you go to the bank, before they lend you any money, they'll want some idea about how you're going to use it. They'll want to see your forecasts to see what you're going to do with the money and also to assess your financial viability in the future. The problem, of course, is you are the person who's put together the forecasts, and naturally the bank might be a little bit suspicious that you've been a little too optimistic. They want to know if they can trust these forecasts as being somewhere close to accurate. The problem, of course, is can you ever describe forecasts, which are just estimates, of course, as being right? Can an estimate ever be right? All we can really say is that the estimates look sort of reasonable. So the company might come to you and say, here are my forecasts for the next 6 months, 5 years, who knows, and say, could you please check my forecasts and write a little report on them saying that you think they're okay. Realistically, the best we'll be able to do is to assess these forecasts and then give an opinion that says, as a result of our work, we haven't seen anything to suggest that these forecasts are not reasonable. Negative assurance. With forecasts, we provide negative assurance for the simple reason that being estimates, there's probably not enough evidence available to tell how accurate those numbers are. So due to lack of evidence, lack of work, lack of detail, lower level assurance. Now, as I said, these do come up on the exam reasonably frequently, so a little later on, we'll need to look at an example of these and just look at how you might actually do it. The next example is negative assurance, usually for different reasons. Due diligence reviews are carried out in a number of circumstances, but the one that you're probably most familiar with is when company X wants to take over company Y. Before company X parts with its money, it wants to make sure that what it thinks it's buying, it is actually buying. It wants to check out company Y in a bit more detail. So, if you were about to part with what could be several $100 million, you'd want to check out this company fairly carefully, wouldn't you? Well, ideally, of course, yes, you would. The problem is you need to move fast. Why move fast? Well, number one, when your competitors find out you're buying this company, maybe they will want to jump in and make a higher bid. So you want to get this sorted out pretty quickly before the deal collapses. And secondly, of course, the value of companies is changing on a regular basis. You might agree a price, do the checking, the due diligence, and then come back and find the price has gone up. So with due diligence reviews, the reason normally that less detailed work is done than a full audit is quite simply the fact that you don't have the time available. You need to move quickly.